The room was filled with colorful balloons and bright decorations. People milled around, laughing and chatting. It was a celebration, a fundraiser for the local community center. At the back, Jake stood quietly watching. He felt a mix of anxiety and hope, his heart racing with every laugh and cheer that echoed around him. Behind the main table, a large donation plaque hung on the wall. It was shiny and polished, the names on it gleaming under the lights. People admired it, pointing at the names inscribed there, each representing a contribution to their community. Jake had always loved this place. He spent hours here as a kid playing basketball, joining art classes, and laughing with friends, but today was different. As he stood watching, he noticed a familiar face walking towards the plaque. It was Maria, the director of the community center. She always had a warmth about her, a light in her eyes that made people feel safe. Today she wore her usual smile, but it looked a little brighter, a little more excited. He had known her for years, and she had watched him grow from a shy kid into a somewhat timid adult. Everyone, her voice rang out, pulling Jake from his thoughts. She gestured towards the plaque, and the crowd quieted, leaning in to hear her words. Jake felt his stomach twist. He knew his name was on that plaque. He had donated a small amount last year when he inherited some money. It wasn't much, just enough to help keep the lights on and the doors open, but he hadn't told anyone he had given. In fact, he had kept it a secret, unsure if he deserved to be recognized for it. Maria pointed at the plaque again, her eyes shining. At that moment, she glanced behind her, searching, and there he stood, frozen in the back. Her smile widened when she saw him, waving him forward. Jake, panic gripped him. Why did she have to say his name? As if the entire room was suddenly focused on him, his face flushed. All he wanted to do was shrink away, blend into the wall, but Maria beckoned. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their eyes on him. Stepping forward felt like walking through thick mud. Each step grew heavier. The warmth of the room seemed to drain away, replaced by a cold sweat creeping down his back. When he reached her, she placed a hand on his shoulder. "Thank you for your generosity, Jake." He smiled weakly, unsure of what to say. "Thanks, I just wanted to help," he mumbled, his voice trembling slightly. The crowd gave a polite applause, but he barely heard it. All he could focus on was that plaque, a permanent reminder of his small contribution, standing proud for everyone to see. Maria gestured towards the plaque again. "Everyone, this is what community is all about." He nodded, trying to appear confident, but inside, doubt crept in. Did he really make a difference? His heart pounded with each passing moment. As she continued talking, he scanned the room, his gaze lingering on a few familiar faces. Some were friends, others just friendly faces from the community. All of them seemed so supportive, so eager to celebrate, but there was one face that made him uncomfortable. In the corner stood Mike. They had grown up together, but Jake knew Mike had a different view of how life worked. He was the kind of guy who expected everything without putting in the work. Mike had often belittled Jake for being too soft, too careful. Jake felt Mike's eyes on him, a piercing judgment that made his skin crawl. As the event went on, Jake felt a mix of emotions. He was proud, but also embarrassed. Pride for being a part of this amazing place, and embarrassment for having his name out there. He had never been one for the spotlight, preferring to stay in the background, away from attention. Maria announced the start of the raffle, drawing cheers from the crowd. Tickets were rattled in excitement, and he watched people gather eagerly around the table. Jake sank back into the shadows, feeling more uncertain with each passing moment. He wanted to leave, but felt tethered to his spot, unable to move away from the plaque and the spotlight that had for one brief second been cast upon him. Suddenly, the laughter turned to gasps. Jake looked up as Maria announced the prize for the final winner. She announced dramatically. A round of applause echoed through the room, but then her voice trembled as she read the name. "The winner is..." Jake's heart sank further, the lightness of the moment crushed by the weight of his envy. Mike sauntered forward, a grin splitting his face, drinking in the applause like it was a fine wine. As he accepted the prize, Jake felt anger bubbling inside him. What right did Mike have to be winning anything? He hadn't contributed anything good to their community. As the crowd cheered, Jake felt small and trapped, like he was in a world that didn't want him, where contributions meant nothing unless you were loud and proud. He clenched his fists, wishing he could just disappear. But then Maria's voice broke through again, simple yet powerful. "I want to remind everyone that every contribution counts, big or small. We're building this community together." Jake's heart began to beat in rhythm with her words. Every contribution matters. That echoed in his mind. It didn't matter that he was shy or quiet. What mattered was that he cared enough to contribute. Still, he could feel Mike's eyes watching him, filled with judgment and mockery. But at that moment, something shifted in Jake. He realized that Mike's opinion didn't define him. He was not here for Mike. He was here to support something greater than himself, a community that mattered and a place that had shaped him. He stepped back from the wall, a new resolve bubbling inside him. With every word Maria said, he felt more connected to those around him. The kids laughing, the families chatting, the people coming together. It was all real and it was all important. As the evening drew on, Jake decided to approach Maria again. She was surrounded by well-wishers, but when she saw him, she brightened. "Jake, thank you for mentioning me," he stammered, feeling a rush of gratitude mixed with his earlier embarrassment. It means a lot, Maria smiled, her gaze steady. It does make a difference. Every bit of support helps keep this place alive. Jake nodded, feeling his chest swell with something he hadn't felt before: pride. Not the kind that made him want to shout from the rooftops, but a quiet, steady sense of belonging. I'm really glad I could help, he admitted, the sincerity pouring from him. She asked, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. We're always looking for volunteers. For the first time in a long time, Jake felt a surge of hope. I think I could help with some programs. Maria clapped her hands together. We can start small and then build from there. As the crowd began to disperse, Jake felt lighter, freer. The insecurities that had weighed him down began to dissolve. He had made a choice of stepping up instead of stepping back, and that felt powerful. He noticed Mike hanging back, looking smug and dismissive. For a moment, Jake felt a flicker of anger return, but he brushed it aside. Mike didn't define who he was. Jake glanced up at the plaque one last time. His name was there, shining just like the others, and it felt okay now. It felt right. Walking out into the cool night air, he took a deep breath, feeling a newfound sense of purpose. He didn't need to hide anymore. He belonged here, and he was ready to claim that space. Together with his community, they were writing a new chapter, one where everyone mattered, including him. The room was alive with chatter and laughter, the buzz of celebration filling the air. Hung above the crowd, it was a night to remember, a fundraiser for the local community center that had once been a second home to so many. But Jake stood in the back, frozen, his heart hammering in his chest. He felt the warmth of playful conversations swirl around him like a cozy blanket, but he couldn't shake the ice-cold grip of uncertainty. Was it really that long ago when he had run through these halls as a kid, scraping his knees playing basketball? Now at 28, standing at the edge of the crowd made him feel small and invisible. As everyone mingled and shared stories, Jake's eyes drifted toward the wall where a polished donation plaque hung. It glimmered, reflecting the twinkling lights overhead. Jake remembered how he'd signed that plaque just a couple of months ago. He had scraped together the last of his savings, feeling an odd sense of pride, but it hadn't come without doubt. The amount had seemed small, a mere blip compared to the million-dollar donations from key players in the community. But tonight, that plaque was a beacon, a testament to contributions big and small. Maria, the beloved director of the center, stepped up to the microphone, her presence commanding. When Maria spoke, people listened. She had a way of making everyone feel important, uniting them in a shared purpose. Everyone, her voice rang clear, drawing attention. We're here to celebrate our community and those who help make it possible. Jake felt an incredible rush of emotions. Pride surged, but so did fear. Would anyone figure out that his donation was a small part of a much larger picture? He wanted to sink into the shadows, but he knew he couldn't hide forever. As Maria continued to speak about the impact of donations, Jake scanned the room. He noticed people nodding, grateful smiles on their faces, and the soft murmur of appreciation flowing around him. But then his stomach dropped when he caught sight of Mike, leaning casually against a wall. Mike was a local businessman known for his bravado and harsh words. They were friends once, but years of competition and harsh judgments had widened the gap between them. Mike noticed Jake, a smirk sliding across his face. That look was familiar. It was the same one Mike wore every time he had a chance to put Jake down. Jake wasn't just uncomfortable, he wanted to disappear. In that moment, Maria pointed to the plaque, her voice filled with excitement. And let's acknowledge our amazing donors. We couldn't do this without you. The crowd turned to the plaque and Jake felt his heart race. There it was, his name, Jake Nelson, just a few letters etched into wood, but it felt like a spotlight trained directly on him. He noticed people glancing back towards the back where he stood. It was as if his name had shouted out to the crowd, demanding attention. Maria called, her voice inviting yet piercing through the hum of the crowd. He felt the air leave his lungs. All eyes were on him, and in that moment, time stretched out like a rubber band ready to snap. Mike's expression shifted, curiosity playing in his gaze, and that made Jake's skin crawl. With every ounce of courage he could muster, Jake moved forward, his feet feeling heavy. He made his way through the crowd, the laughter and chatter fading into the background noise. His mind spun. Would people look at him differently now? Did they care about the small role he played? He felt like an imposter. As he reached the front, Maria grinned, wrapping an arm around him. Jake, thank you for your generosity. Applause erupted around him, but it sounded distant, muffled. Jake smiled weakly, feeling exposed. He had always chosen to stay in the background, and here he was thrust into the spotlight. Thoughts raced through his mind. Was this what it felt like to be recognized, or was it just a moment until people lost interest? Then Maria gestured to the plaque. Jake's heart sank again as a wave of unease washed over him. Maria kept talking, her enthusiasm contagious, but all he could focus on was the plaque, his name up there, needing validation from everyone in the room. And just then, laughter erupted at the back of the room. Mike, leaning against the wall, had whispered something to a group of friends, and they all turned to Jake with knowing glances. The laughter felt like daggers, piercing through his fragile confidence. Was Mike laughing at him? Maria continued speaking, oblivious. We're gathering together to show that unity makes us stronger. Jake watched nervously as Mike drifted closer, a self-assured grin plastered on his face. he said loudly, gesturing toward Jake. His name is on the wall, but it's not like he's done much around here. The laughter erupted again, and Jake's cheeks burned with shame. In that moment, it felt as if the room had shrunk, everyone's eyes glued to him. He opened his mouth but found no words. All he could see was the plaque, and all he could feel was his heart racing. Then Maria stepped in, her voice firm. Now, everyone. Jake felt a flicker of gratitude towards her, but it was quickly overshadowed by doubt. Could he really stand tall? Did his small contribution mean anything in a crowd like this where opinions were loud and competitive? Jake looked back at the plaque, almost seeking comfort. Yes, he may not have donated a lot, but what if that small sum could light a spark? Beneath the weight of the judgments, he realized the disbelief simmering within him. He wanted to help, but worried it wasn't enough. The event continued, laughter and chatter resuming around him, but the earlier joy faded into disappointment. Jake retreated to the back of the room once more, lingering by the edge. He watched as people exchanged stories, their bonds over the community palpable, and he wondered what was stopping him from being part of that. As if sensing his turmoil, Maria came to speak with him again. Jake, don't let the noise discourage you. Your contribution is valid. We all start somewhere. Her words resonated, carving a path through his anxiety. Perhaps he was more than just a name on the plaque. Maybe his presence here tonight meant something, but the feeling of doubt still loomed like a dark cloud, always ready to overshadow any moment of brightness. Just then, Mike approached again, this time more directly. So you really think you can make a difference? That condescending tone hit hard, igniting a spark of defiance inside him. You don't know anything about me, Jake snapped, surprising even himself. The heat of the moment propelled him forward. Surprisingly, Mike paused, his expression shifting from amusement to confusion and then to forced indifference. Oh really, what's stopping you from proving it? As Mike walked away, Jake felt the fury rise in him. Was it true? Did he always hide? But at the same time, he felt the rising tide of determination building within him. He didn't have to prove anything to anyone, least of all Mike. Jake took a deep breath, the sound of laughter still echoing in the room. Confidence flickered like a candle flame, growing stronger as he realized he was part of this community, whether he liked it or not. He had come here tonight to make a difference, no matter how small. Fueled by adrenaline, he turned back toward the crowd, listening to their voices, engaging in their joy. You know what? I'm gonna help, he muttered to himself. I'm going to commit more time, be involved. A sense of warmth washed over him. He could feel a bond forming with the community around him. Each laugh, each cheer felt like an invitation. This was not just about money, it was about unity, strength, and resilience. Why couldn't he add his name to that story too? As Maria wrapped up the evening, Jake found himself getting lost in her words again. Together, we can achieve so much. She called the names again, and this time, Jake didn't shy away. He raised his hands, clapping alongside others. He smiled, and it felt genuine. The applause trailed off and the crowd started to disperse, but Jake lingered. He walked toward the plaque one last time, running a hand over the names etched into the wood. He felt less like an imposter and more part of a legacy, a history of contribution and love. And as Mike brushed past him, Jake didn't feel a tremor of doubt or fear. Instead, he stood taller. I will be part of this community, he whispered under his breath, the quiet promise echoing within. This was just the beginning. Jake stepped back into the room, ready to face whatever came next. Today, he found courage in his heart, and that plaque wouldn't just be a name. It would become a reminder of how he could emerge from the shadows and step into the light. With each heartbeat, he felt a growing sense of belonging, a powerful realization that he was creating a space for himself in this ever-evolving community. The crowd buzzed like a hive, laughter and chatter filling the air, but in the back of the room, Jake stood frozen, the warmth around him fading into a chill. He was at the annual fundraiser for the local community center, a place he'd loved growing up. But now, as he watched the excited faces of friends mingling, he felt entirely out of place, like a ghost haunting a place he once called home. Maria, the director of the center, stood at the front, her presence magnetic. She had this way of lighting up a room, her voice lifting everyone's spirits. Just the sight of her made memories flood through him, running in the gym, attending art classes, and sharing snacks with friends on the old swings outside. Her words rang out, and the crowd erupted in applause. But Jake felt a pulling in his gut, anxiety gnawing at him. He had been part of this community for years, yet tonight, standing at the edge of the room, he felt more like a spectator. Jake cast his eyes toward the donation plaque mounted on the far wall. The polished wood gleamed under the soft lights, names of contributors etched into it like a trophy case of kindness. And there it was, his name, Jake Nelson. Just a few letters, but they carried a weight he had not anticipated. He had donated a small sum recently, the last bit of his savings from a bonus at work. It felt so trivial compared to many of the amounts donated by local businesses and influential figures. He had tossed and turned over, even signing his name, unsure if anyone would even notice. In this crowd of people brimming with confidence and success, he felt like a shadow, barely noticeable against the vibrant backdrop of life. But tonight that plaque seemed to glow, promising recognition and connection. Suddenly Maria's voice punctured his thoughts, drawing the crowd's attention back to her. The moment she said his name, Jake's heart raced, his gut twisting in panic. Had she really just called him out? Jake froze, barely aware of the warm applause erupting around him. It felt like every face turned toward him immediately, but he couldn't move. He was anchored to the floor like a deer caught in headlights. A mix of emotions surged within him: panic, embarrassment, pride, and a desire to vanish all at once. Maria beckoned him, her smile inviting yet overwhelming. Every instinct screamed at him to turn and hide, to slip out of the door and away from the suffocating spotlight, but he couldn't retreat now. With a shaky breath, he pushed through the crowd, his feet feeling like lead. Each step was a battle against his own self-doubt, the cheers of encouragement clashing with the judgment he feared. As he reached the front, Maria held her hand out and pulled him in for a hug, her warmth comforting yet dizzying. "Thank you for being a part of our community," she said, her sincerity washing over him like a wave. The applause surged again, and Jake managed a tentative smile, not entirely sure how to feel. He was a quiet guy, a man of few words, and now he stood here exposed. Could he really make an impact? As he forced himself to turn toward the plaque, something in the crowd shifted. A familiar figure moved through the sea of smiles. Mike, Jake's old friend, turned rival. For years, Mike had thrived on proving his worth, climbing the ranks in their small town with a blend of charm and arrogance. Now he lingered at the back, watching with a sneer that made Jake's stomach drop. Mike shouted with mock enthusiasm, drawing laughter from nearby onlookers. Heat surged to Jake's cheeks. Suddenly, the applause felt hollow, the crowd's warmth turning into frost as Mike's words hung heavy in the air. Jake took a breath, willing himself to shake it off. He glanced at Maria, who had been caught off guard by Mike's outburst. Instead of scolding, she replied, "Everyone has their way of giving back, Mike." Jake felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he wasn't as invisible as he thought. With the laughter still echoing around him, he could feel doubt creeping in. Was his small donation worthy of the spotlight? Did they even know how little he gave? With each passing moment, those questions twisted in him, squeezing tighter. But then Maria continued, her voice echoing in the room, cutting through his thoughts. "Our community thrives because of voices like Jake's." The warmth began to seep back into Jake's bones. There it was again, the idea of unity. Perhaps it was time to leave the shadows, time to find a way to really belong here. As he stood there, he remembered all of the times he had hesitated to step forward, shrinking under the weight of self-doubt. Tonight was different. In response to the crowd, he took a deep breath. "Thank you, everyone, Maria's right." The words spilled out before he could second-guess them. His voice was steady, and for the first time in a while, he felt like he was standing on solid ground. The crowd responded with applause, and he felt gratitude swell within him. Maybe it was a small move, but he found himself just a bit more firmly planted. As he shared another quick smile with Maria, he glanced back to where Mike had been standing. But Mike was gone, having slipped towards the sidelines, leaving laughter lingering like a fog. With the moment grounding him, he turned back toward the crowd, realizing that looking around at these familiar faces felt warm. They were all here to share and support one another. It was more than just a fundraiser. It was about coming together, fostering connections that mattered. Maria introduced the raffle next, her excitement bursting into the room. Jake felt the energy shift again, laughter rising, interactions flowing as people gathered around the table displaying the prizes. In that swirl of joy, Jake felt a twinge of longing. He had spent too long standing back, waiting for a moment to prove himself instead of making one. A familiar voice snapped him from his reverie. It was Lisa, a friend from childhood. She was bubbly and had an infectious enthusiasm that always made him feel lighter. "I'm so glad to see you here. I can't believe you donated." Pride prickled at him. "Thanks, Lisa. Absolutely, you're a part of this community and we need folks like you," she said, her eyes bright. "Have you thought about volunteering?" Jake felt a rush of warmth. The idea had floated into his mind before, but he had brushed it aside. Yet now, hearing it from Lisa felt validating. "Awesome," she said enthusiastically, pulling out her phone. As they chatted about it, Jake felt the lightness grow. He was no longer just the quiet guy in the back. He was stepping into the vibration of this gathering, becoming a part of something meaningful. After a while, Lisa wandered off to grab a drink, leaving him in his thoughts. He observed the laughter and engagement around him. Friends were hugging, kids were running about, and the atmosphere sparkled with genuine camaraderie. It was a far cry from the dread he felt when he first entered. With an urge to immerse himself, Jake decided to navigate the crowd. He found himself chatting with a few familiar faces, connecting through shared stories of the center, reminiscing about the good times that shaped their youth. Each word flowed easier than the last, melting away the lingering worries. As the raffle continued, he couldn't help but feel something was shifting in him. The way people were coming together spoke volumes. It made him realize the incredible power of community, the strength to lift each other up instead of tearing anyone down. When he caught a glimpse of admiration from Maria, he felt a surge of warmth again. No longer just a name on the plaque, he was becoming intertwined with something greater. "All right, folks," Maria declared with enthusiasm, bringing everyone's attention back to the front. "We're going to announce the grand prize winner." Cheers erupted, the energy in the room electrifying. Jake shifted, feeling anticipation crackle like static electricity in the air. He felt a sense of belonging swelling in his chest. Tension teased the group as Maria began to draw the name, her hand poised dramatically inside the bowl. And the winner is, Jake almost choked on his drink. A wave of humbling shock washed over him. Every eye turned toward him again, but this time he didn't flinch. With laughter and applause, he made his way to the front again. Wow, thank you. As Maria handed him a gift card for a local restaurant, she leaned closer, whispering, "This is just the beginning, Jake." He took the card, heart racing with the same adrenaline of the earlier night. "Thank you." As he turned to face the crowd, something shifted within him. He was no longer just a background figure. He was stepping boldly into this community, ready to lend his hand, his heart. Jake smiled at the people around him, and he could sense their smiles returning, reflecting an understanding that they were all in this together. It was more than just a fundraiser now. It was a promise of connection, growth, and endless possibilities. In that moment, he saw his name on the plaque differently. It wasn't just a reminder of his small donation. It was a call to action, a call to be part of something alive and vibrant, a call to break through the shadows, to make a difference, to find his place, and he knew he would. That night ignited something profound in Jake. The fear that had once gripped him slowly melted away. He walked away not just with a trophy of his name, but a newfound sense of self, a commitment to engage, to invest in the very community that nurtured him. And as he stepped out into the night, stars glittering above, he felt ready, a quiet warrior of kindness stepping into the light, determined to make a difference. The room pulsed with life, vibrant colors swirling around like confetti in the air. Laughter echoed off the walls, mixing with the clinking of glasses and the soft strains of music in the background. It was the annual fundraiser for the local community center, a place where memories were made and friendships were forged. But as Jake stood in the back, he felt like a stranger at a party where everyone else was already having a great time. His heart raced as he scanned the room, the warmth of celebration wrapped in uncertainty. He could see familiar faces, neighbors and friends who once shared joy and laughter with him. Yet tonight he felt like an outsider. The sight of the polished donation plaque on the wall sent a jolt of anxiety through him, a constant reminder of what he had done and who he had chosen to be. The plaque glistened under the soft lights, showcasing the names of generous sponsors who had contributed to the community's growth. Jake had signed his name just weeks before, trembling as he finally mustered the courage to contribute a small amount from his modest paycheck. It had felt important to him, a drop in an ocean of kindness. But as he stood there, he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that he didn't belong among the names whose contributions dwarfed his. Maria's voice rang out, bringing the crowd to attention. As the director of the center, she had a way of commanding a room, her heartfelt passion spilling into every word she spoke. Jake felt his pulse quicken, but he remained at the back, half hidden behind the warmth of a group of laughing friends. He loved this community. It had shaped him, nurtured him, but being summoned into the spotlight felt far beyond his comfort zone. "And now I want to take a moment to recognize some of our incredible donors," Maria continued, her gaze sweeping the crowd until it landed on Jake. The world around him seemed to drown out, her smile igniting a sense of dread that sent tremors through his body. Time froze, the laughter faded, replaced by a hushed anticipation. His stomach dropped as all eyes turned toward him. The spotlight felt blinding, and Jake's instinct was to retreat, to melt into the backdrop of the crowd. But there was nowhere to hide. Maria called out, her enthusiasm piercing through Jake's fog of apprehension. Jake's heart raced like an untamed horse. He wanted more than anything to vanish, to escape this moment, yet there was a curious force pulling him toward her, toward the front. He could hear a few gentle claps, but they felt distant, muffled, as he made his way forward, each step increasing the weight on his shoulders. As he drew closer, he could see the familiar faces watching him, some smiling encouragingly, others leaning closer with curiosity. But what caught his eye was the plaque once more, his name shining with a brightness that seemed far too bold against the backdrop of his insecurities. He stepped up to Maria, whose smile radiated warmth that felt like sunlight breaking through the clouds. She said, her voice genuine and reassuring. Jake tried to muster a smile, but instead he felt like he was caught in a whirlwind of emotions. He managed a nod, unsure of what to say as applause engulfed him. What was he doing here? Did this really matter? "Well, don't be shy," Maria prompted, pushing him gently toward the microphone. Fear froze him in place. Every inch of him screamed to retreat, but with a deep breath he spoke. Thanks everyone, I just wanted to help." Voice trembled, not quite holding the confidence that often resonated in the vibrant room. The applause shifted slightly, a few murmurs of encouragement floating back to him. He glanced at his name again, feeling it there, as if it were a silently screaming reminder that he had stepped off the edge into the unknown. As he stood there awkwardly, he caught a glimpse of Mike standing at the back of the room, arms crossed, with a smirk playing on his lips. That familiar knot of anxiety twisted in Jake's stomach. Mike had always been the king of confidence, the one who thrived on being in control, making bold moves that commanded attention. He had never held back on his opinion, especially when it came to Jake. "What a nice little gesture from Mr. Mike," shouted, his voice dripping with sarcasm. The laughter that followed cut through the supportive atmosphere. Jake's heart sank. The crowd glanced at Mike, laughter erupting in waves that made Jake shrink even further. The warmth of the room felt like it was fading, replaced by ice-cold doubt swirling within him. Was Mike right? Maybe he didn't belong here, but Maria stepped in, her voice strong. We're all about lifting each other up here, right? Her words broke through the embarrassment, igniting something deep within. Jake nodded, the warmth returning. I just want to be part of something, he said, the words flowing from his heart. That small admission felt liberating, a chance to shed some of the weight he had been carrying. The crowd clapped again, this time with a rhythm that resonated more profoundly. Jake found strength in the moment. It pushed back the shadows Mike seemed to cast. With the atmosphere shifting, even Mike fell silent. Jake could see the laughter fading from his face as he realized this wasn't just a joke anymore. People were connecting, hearts were opening. The applause grew louder and more resonant, creating a symphony of support swirling around Jake. And then it happened, the moment transformed. He found courage in the shared energy of the room, and instead of feeling like a pariah, he began to embrace his place among them. Maybe this was more than just a name on a plaque. This was a chance to contribute to something lasting, a legacy of community that reached past individual contributions. Community means support, he continued, saying what he had always felt deep inside. It means being there for one another even if our contributions look different. More applause rang out, the surge of love wrapping around him like a warm embrace. Jake had lifted his voice and it had resonated. As he looked around, he took in the faces filled with warmth, understanding, and compassion. This wasn't just about money, it was about shared experiences, building connections that knit lives together. The raffle had just begun, and as the crowd cheered, Jake felt lighter, like an anchor that had been weighing him down had finally been released. He stepped back, exhilarated and sucked into the joy of being seen and heard. All right, folks, Maria announced, gathering the crowd's attention again. Jake mingled with people afterward, discussing the prizes, sharing stories. Laughter flowed freely as they reminisced about the past and dreamed about the future. He felt like a new person, shedding the old layers of doubt and insecurities with every shared laugh. But the closer he got to the end of the night, the harder it became to shake off Mike completely. Jake caught sight of him again, lingering at the corner. Mike was surrounded by friends laughing, but Jake could see a hint of annoyance flicker across his face whenever he glanced at the laughter around him. For Jake, this was a turning point. Mike had held power over him for too long, and now, under the welcome glow of community support, Todd realized that his voice counted. He didn't have to drown himself in self-doubt anymore. Making a surprising decision, Jake approached Mike, who wore a smug grin like armor. Hey Mike, Jake said, his voice steady despite the knot of tension coiling between them. What's up, Jake? Didn't know you had it in you to take the stage, Mike replied, his tone still biting. Jake took a deep breath. I'm just trying to engage, there's more to life than just big donations. Mike rocked back on his heels, arrogance flickering for a moment. Sure, but don't get your hopes up. A swell of confidence surged through Jake. I'm not trying to be a star. That retort hung between them, the words settling into the air like an unspoken challenge. For the first time, Mike faltered. He shrugged as if brushing Jake off, but the smug grin faded, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. I guess we'll see how things play out, Mike replied dismissively, but Jake felt an unfamiliar strength building within him. As the event wound down, Jake found himself drawn to the plaque once more. He stood before it, and the shining letters felt different now. His name was now more than an inscription, it was a badge of honor. It reminded him of his journey, of stepping out of the shadows and saying yes to community, friendship, and support. He realized that this was just the beginning. A commitment to foster connections, to not only take but also give back in meaningful ways. As he stepped away, Jake felt a sense of relief wash over him. The evening had transformed him. He wasn't just living in the background anymore, he was stepping into the light. Walking out into the fresh night air, he felt invigorated. The stars sparkled above, illuminating the path ahead. He was ready not just to blend in, but to thrive in this vibrant community, where echoes of laughter still filled the air and hope thrived in every interaction. That night would forever mark a turning point. Jake understood now that standing tall meant embracing every part of who he was. It meant showing up, both for himself and for the community that had shaped him. With newfound strength and purpose, he stepped confidently forward, determined to not just be a name on a plaque, but a vital part of the story. Everything had changed, and he was ready to embrace it. The room buzzed with electricity, laughter ringing like a sweet melody, and the air was rich with the scent of freshly baked goods. Jake stood at the back, his heart racing as he watched the crowd chatter and mingle at the annual community fundraiser. It was a lively event at the local community center, a place where he had spent countless afternoons after school, running around with friends, lost in games, laughter, and life's simple joys. But tonight he felt like a shadow lurking at the edge of a vibrant painting, almost noticeable but fundamentally absent. As Maria, the director of the center, stepped up to the microphone, her bright smile lit up the room. She was the heartbeat of the community, her warmth wrapping around everyone like a comforting hug. Thank you all for coming tonight." Her voice was enthusiastic, resonating through the hall like a clarion call, and Jake felt a stirring of something deep within him. Yet he stayed rooted to his spot, fidgeting with the cuffs of his shirt, feeling the weight of his contribution dragging him down like an anchor. It was just a modest donation, an amount that had felt significant only in the privacy of his own thoughts. But now, among so many generous souls, he felt small. He couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't belong. "Tonight we'll be acknowledging those who have gone above and beyond to help us grow and thrive," Maria continued, her eyes scanning the crowd, and then it happened. She exclaimed, her gaze pinning him to the spot. Frozen, Jake's heart leaped into his throat. Every pair of eyes seemed to turn toward him, bright and expectant. Panic surged through him and his feet felt glued to the wooden floor. How could this be happening? He had thought his donation would go unnoticed, a simple act lost among broader titles and larger sums. Maria urged with an inviting wave. She radiated encouragement, but all he felt was a rush of blood roaring in his ears. "Just breathe," he whispered to himself, knowing he had to force his legs to move. The sound of applause echoed around him, each clap hitting him like a wave, pushing him forward even before he knew what he was doing. With every step, the warmth of the crowd enveloped him, but so did the chill of self-doubt. The whispers he tried to ignore became louder. What if they didn't see him as a real contributor? The plaque on the wall flashed into his mind, the one with his name hastily scribbled among illustrious others, community leaders and benefactors. It felt like an imposter's mark. As he made his way to the front, he couldn't help but catch sight of the plaque behind Maria, a polished wooden board adorned with names that glimmered under the soft lighting. Just 3 words, simple, yet they felt like a spotlight shining directly upon him. He could feel the intensity of the moment weighing him down. "Thank you, Jake," Maria said, reaching out to shake his hand and draw him closer. Jake managed a tight smile but felt as if he would shatter into a million pieces. "Thanks, I just wanted to help," he stammered. His voice felt foreign in his own ears, trembling slightly, the words tasting metallic on his tongue. And then it happened. Like a dark cloud sliding across the sun, Mike stepped forward from the crowd, arms crossed and an amused smirk plastered on his face. "What's the matter, Jake?" he called out, his voice ringing with sarcasm that cut through the warmth of the gathering. Laughter erupted and Jake's heart sank. He could feel his shoulders hunching inward, wishing desperately to shrink back into the wall. Panic flooded his senses, every single piece of him wanted to escape. Was this what he had bargained for? "Come on, Mike," Maria interjected immediately, biting back frustration. Jake's cheeks burned crimson. Mike's piercing gaze felt like a spotlight too, but this one was harsh and unkind. Every mocking laugh echoed, and the warmth from a moment ago began to freeze into dread. But just as he thought he might be swallowed whole by the moment, he felt a surge of warmth from the crowd once more. Familiar faces, friends, and neighbors leaped in to support him, clapping him back into the light. "Hey, let's give Jake a hand." Someone called out and the rhythm of applause resumed, lifting Jake like a buoy from the ocean of despair. He took a deep breath, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I didn't think this was a big deal," he spoke, forcing the words out. The atmosphere softened again like a blanket wrapping around a chilled soul. Maria nodded, her eyes shining. "You see how much you're valued here, Jake." Jake felt the anger and despair bend into appreciation. Something shifted within him like a flicker of flame trying to break through the fog. For the first time, he recognized that he mattered, even if his name didn't shine as bright as others. Just then, Maria turned back to the crowd and encouraged everyone to share their own contributions, their own stories. And as stories unfolded, Jake absorbed the energy around him, the tales of struggles, triumphs, and the fuzzy warmth of shared laughter. Slowly, the shadows that Mike cast began to recede, and Jake's heart began to open up, filling the space around him with newfound respect for even the small gestures of generosity. The event flowed on, laughter filling the space along with joyous banter and excited chatter. For the first time, Jake took a step back, surveying the scene. He felt the community surrounding him, an intricate tapestry of lives intertwined, each thread a reminder that everyone here was part of something bigger. Each person had a part to play, a voice that mattered. Then the raffle began and excitement swirled anew. His heart raced with every name called, people eagerly jumping at the chance to celebrate. A wave of pride washed over him, thrilling at how so many were united in the spirit of fun and support. As he watched friends draw together nearer, their laughter warm and enveloping, he felt gratitude quelling the last remnants of his anxiety. But the reality of Mike nagged at him still, a shadow refusing to fade entirely. Just moments ago, Mike's laughter had threatened to overwhelm him, but he found courage in his own resolve. Why should Mike's words color his experience? Defiance bubbled within, ready to burst forth like a rising tide. Toward the end of the evening, Jake sought out Maria again, feeling bolstered by the night's energy. "You know, I'd like to do more. I want to volunteer." "Help out in whatever way I can," he confessed, his voice steady and clear. Her eyes sparkled as she beamed at him. "That's wonderful, Jake. We can always use more helping hands." With renewed vigor, he smiled back, the corners of his mouth lifting as joy danced in his eyes. The The unease that had shadowed him earlier felt like it had melted away, revealing something shiny beneath his desire to belong, to contribute, to give back in ways that mattered. As people began to filter out, Jake felt regret lingering in the air. His heart ached when he spotted Mike again, lingering at the edge of the space. He hesitated for a moment, but that kernel of determination grew stronger. Jake called out, his voice bold and firm. Mike glanced over, surprise flickering across his face. With a slight wrinkle of confusion, he approached, reluctance evident in his posture. Taking a deep breath, Jake stood tall. "I just wanted to say that I'm not going to let your words hold me back anymore." Mike smirked, but Jake held his ground. "And I guess I hope you can get on board too." A flicker of discomfort crossed Mike's face, and for a moment the mask of bravado slipped. "Yeah, well, whatever." Jake felt a flutter of triumph. Despite the hollow words, it was enough to know he had asserted himself, enough to understand that he wasn't defined by anyone else. He wasn't just the name on a plaque anymore. He was living proof of transformation, of emerging from doubt to claim his place among the thriving community. As he turned to leave, he felt lighter. The night had turned into something immersive and beautiful, a tapestry woven with laughter, connection, and strength. He stepped into the cool night air, every breath filling him with hope. Stars twinkled overhead, illuminating a path forward, a reminder of all the possibilities awaiting him. Tonight had been a journey from the shadows into the light. He felt ready to embrace whatever came next, not just for himself but for the community that had shaped him. With renewed purpose and commitment, Jake knew this was the beginning of something profound. The whispers of doubt no longer echoed in his mind. He was ready to be part of the narrative, claiming his story in a community that would continue to grow and thrive, one small gesture at a time. He was more than a name on a plaque. He was a voice, a heartbeat, a force of kindness pushing toward the extraordinary, and he was determined to make it count. The room buzzed with energy, a swirl of laughter and chatter rising to the ceiling like balloons floating into the air. It was the annual fundraiser for the local community center, a place rich with memories and camaraderie. But as Jake stood in the back, his heart thumped heavy in his chest. This was supposed to be a night of celebration, yet he felt more like a ghost, a silent observer in a gathering bursting with life. Guests cradled glasses filled with sparkling drinks, the light glinting off the bubbles like stars caught in liquid. And Jake couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt. Beneath the cheerful facade, he was wrestling with a whirlpool of insecurities. How had he ended up here, standing awkwardly against the wall? His eyes drifted to the large donation plaque hung proudly at the front of the room. There, etched in glimmering gold, were the names of those who had given to keep the center running, to support youth programs, workshops, and community events. There it was, his name, Jake Nelson, just a few letters among shining giants. When he had made that donation a month ago, he had thought it would contribute to something bigger. But now, in this sea of names, it felt trivial. Maria, the heart and soul of the community center, took the stage with her radiant smile. "Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight." Her voice carried an infectious enthusiasm that seemed to wrap around Jake like a warm embrace, but he felt the heat of shame creeping into his cheeks. "We're so grateful for everyone's contributions." She continued, gesturing toward the plaque. In that instant, Jake's world narrowed. His heart raced, a warning signal blasting in his mind. He could feel her gaze scanning the room, and then it landed right on him. Time froze. The buzzing sound of excitement evaporated, replaced by a deafening silence. Every single eye turned toward him, and Jake felt a rush of blood pound in his ears. Panic gripped him like a vice. This couldn't be happening. Maria beckoned, her voice warm and encouraging. Something deep within him churned, an instinct to flee. But before he could process it, his feet moved awkwardly, at first dragging him from the shadows into the spotlight. The air thickened with pressure as he made his way to the front, his heart thundering in his chest. How could a simple act of kindness turn into this? He wanted to melt away into the walls, back into the background where he felt safe. As he approached the stage, the applause began anew, but all he could think about was the plaque and the name, his name shining under the lights. What had felt like an insignificant donation now loomed larger than life, an emblem of every doubt he had faced. Jake reached Maria, who greeted him with a warm hug that felt both comforting and overwhelming. "Thank you for your support, Jake." She turned to the crowd, eyes bright. Jake nodded, put on a smile, but inside, doubt twisted. What did he have to offer? The flutter of uncertainty grew in his gut, a small voice echoing that he didn't belong here. Maria suggested, nodding toward him. Words, panic set in again. I just wanted to help," he managed to say. His voice was barely above a whisper, trembling as uncertainty seeped into every syllable. The crowd murmured encouragement, but he could barely hear over the rush of blood in his ears. "Come on, Jake," someone called out, and though it felt supportive, it only heightened his vulnerability. As the clapping faded, he caught sight of Mike at the back of the room, leaning against a pillar, arms crossed, an amused expression tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Look at you, Jake," Mike shouted, his voice laced with mockery. The room erupted in laughter, a wave crashing over him. Jake's heart sank. The laughter felt like knives, each one carving deeper into his self-worth. He wanted to retreat into the shadows where he had always felt comfortable. But Maria interjected, her voice sharp and clear. "Let's remember we're here to support one another. With those words, the atmosphere shifted. Jake felt the warmth of the crowd surge back, wrapping around him. Maybe Maria was right. Everyone's contribution mattered, no matter the size. Heart tugged he had wanted to play a part in all of this. Taking a deep breath, Jake found a flicker of courage. I may not have donated a lot, but this place is important to me. His voice felt stronger, each word finding its footing, and he began to see the crowd shift. Someone cheered and the applause returned, filling the space with a warm embrace instead of laughter. People nodded in agreement, recognizing the truth in his words. Maria called out, her confidence radiating through the room. In that moment, Jake felt a transformation begin. The weight lifted slightly as the crowd cheered him on, the laughter of doubt fading against the rising tide of support. He was no longer just a name on a plaque, he was a part of this community, deserving of his place within it. Then came the raffle, a flurry of excitement and anticipation. As the night unfolded, the cheerful chaos began to wrap around him. Conversations flowed, laughter filled the air, and Jake found himself caught up in the exhilaration. People were sharing stories, memories, and laughter, each moment intertwining like pieces of a beautiful tapestry. But the mayhem melted away when Jake spotted Mike again. This time, though, Mike didn't wield the same power he had before. Instead, Jake felt a sense of determination igniting within him. He called out, catching the other man's attention. Mike's eyebrows raised, surprised at the willingness to engage. He swaggered over, arms crossed defensively. Something shifted in Jake, the old fears began to dissolve. Look, I know we've had our differences, he said, speaking evenly. But being here tonight made me realize that our community matters more than our past. Mike stared for a moment, the smirk slipping from his face as he took in Jake's sincerity. Good for you, I guess. Impulsively, Jake responded, but that's the point. We can choose to uplift each other. It's not about who has given the most or who can shout the loudest. For a split second, Mike seemed taken aback, his posture shifting slightly as if Jake had momentarily knocked the wind out of him. Yeah, well, good luck with that, he muttered, retreating back into the crowd. Jake felt a mix of relief and pride. He hadn't backed down, instead he had stood his ground. This was his time to embrace the community, to forge connections that mattered. As the party continued, he found himself chatting with friends, laughing and sharing stories. A childhood friend joked, nudging him playfully. Yeah, but not anymore, Jake replied, grinning wide. The sentiment felt genuine, he was done hiding. As the evening wound down, the energy shifted from frenetic excitement to contented warmth. Everyone was mingling, exchanging goodbyes, and promising to catch up again soon. Jake felt an incredible sense of belonging wash over him, like a tidal wave lifting him off his feet and carrying him forward into uncharted waters. Before leaving, he made his way back to the plaque one last time. Jake felt drawn to it, the gold letters shining brightly against the hardwood. His name didn't feel like an embarrassment anymore. It felt like a representation of growth, resilience, and commitment. In that moment, he realized the significance of this experience. He wasn't just another name. He had shown up, he had taken a risk, and he had put his heart on the line. He was part of this fabric, woven together with others who believed in the impact they could collectively make. As he stepped outside into the cool air, the stars twinkled overhead, illuminating the path ahead. Jake felt invigorated, ready to embrace the opportunities waiting for him. With every step, he left behind the shadows of doubt and stepped into a brighter future filled with potential. Tonight was just the beginning. He was done standing still, done melting into the background. Jake was ready to engage, to build connections, to lift others as he climbed. The night had transformed him, igniting a fire within a fire that would push him forward into new heights. With a sense of hope and belonging, he walked away from the community center, feeling lighter and more confident. The journey had just begun, and he knew he would continue to thrive in this beautiful tapestry called community. The future was bright, and he was ready to embrace it, one small act of kindness at a time. The room was alive with laughter and chatter, a swirl of excitement filling the air like the scent of fresh coffee. Jake stood in the back, feeling somehow disconnected from the celebration swirling around him. His heart raced, and he shifted nervously, watching as familiar faces mingled joyfully. Tonight was the community fundraiser he had been both anticipating and dreading. The local community center, a place that had shaped his childhood and served as a haven for so many, was raising funds to keep its doors open. But amid the jubilant atmosphere, Jake felt like a camouflaged shadow in a room full of bright colors hidden but not noticed. He glanced towards the front of the room, where a large donation plaque hung, polished and shimmering under the lights. Name was there, etched in gold lettering. It was a small contribution relative to the others. Most of the names belonged to local businesses and prominent community members who had given generously. Jake had felt proud when he had decided to contribute, scraping together the last of his paycheck for just a modest amount. But now, standing in the back, the weight of that decision felt daunting. The crowd shifted, and he could see Maria, the charismatic director of the center, stepping to the front. She had this innate ability to draw everyone in, her enthusiasm contagious. Jake admired her. She embodied the heart of the center and had a knack for finding the beauty in people. Maria called out, her voice ringing with warmth. The crowd turned to her, smiles broadening as they prepared for another evening of celebration and camaraderie. Jake felt his stomach twist. His palms were sweaty against the fabric of his shirt as he watched Maria begin to highlight individual names. This was the part he dreaded. He had hoped he could just slip quietly into the background, but as she continued, he realized that wouldn't be possible. Tonight, I want to give a special shout out to one of our recent donors. Time seemed to stop. The laughter faded and all eyes turned toward him. Jake froze, his heart racing like a runaway train. There was no mistaking it now. He had been singled out. Panic surged through his chest. He could feel the heat rising to his face as Maria's cheerful expression urged him forward. She cheered and the crowd seemed to echo her encouragement, though every heartbeat felt like it was dragging him deeper into the shadows. Jake couldn't believe it. What had he signed up for when he decided to contribute? Instinctively, his feet gripped the floor and he felt a desperate urge to retreat. But as he stood there rooted, the applause continued to swell around him. Slowly, he took a breath and began to push through the sea of faces. Each step felt like walking through thick mud, a battle against the anxiety that threatened to swallow him whole. As he approached the front, Jake could see the plaque more clearly now. The glimmering names, some bold and long, felt like a judgment against his modest contribution. The light reflected off the wood as if it were taunting him, reminding him of every moment when he had felt less than enough. Maria said with a bright smile as he reached the front. She pulled him into a quick, supportive hug, her warmth momentarily melting the ice of his nerves. Your support truly matters. The words sank in but felt tentative, like they were floating in a sea of doubts. He tried to smile back, but it felt more like a grimace. He had always been introverted, preferring to observe in the background rather than step into the spotlight. And now, standing in front of everyone, he realized this was much bigger than just a donation. The weight of the moment pressed down on him. As he opened his mouth to say something, the laughter cut through again, echoing from the back. When his eyes darted toward the noise, he saw Mike, a familiar face from high school, leaning against the wall, arms crossed, with a wry smile plastered on his face. The sight of him made Jake's stomach flip. Look at this guy, the quiet one finally speaking up. Mike called out, the laughter erupting around him again. Jake's cheeks burned. The mocking tone made the laughter sting even more, slicing through the support he had felt moments earlier. All around, heads turned, eyes glancing back and forth between Jake and Mike. The judgment simmering beneath the surface felt unbearable. Maria cut back in, her voice sharp and resolute. Jake felt like a balloon losing air, deflating with each echo of laughter, his courage dwindling. Did Mike's opinion matter? That voice in his head told him it did, and every ounce of pride he had built crumbled under the weight of that judgment. His mind raced, searching for an escape. Suddenly, Maria stepped in closer, her gaze steady. Jake, we appreciate your contribution, no matter the size. With those words, something shifted within him. Maybe this wasn't just about showing off how much money he could give. It was about standing up for something he cared about demonstrating that everyone's support counted. Feeling the warmth of Maria's encouragement stoke a fire within him, Jake found the courage to speak again. I didn't expect to be up here tonight. Honestly, I just wanted to help. This place means a lot to me. The room fell into a supportive hush as the truth of his feelings washed over him. He could see heads nodding, the warmth of understanding enveloping him. Maybe Mike didn't define his worth. Each moment in this community had shaped him, and his name on that plaque meant more than just money. Someone cheered from the back, breaking the tension. Jake's heart surged as he sensed the shift around him. The laughter that had once felt mocking slowly morphed into applause, and he found comfort in the sense of belonging that filled the room. Maria's eyes shone as she smiled back at him. Thank you, Jake. As applause rippled through the crowd, Jake felt lighter. The worry that had clouded him moments before began to lift, revealing a brighter, more hopeful reality. Maybe he wasn't just standing in the back anymore, he was finding his footing in the center. As the raffle segment of the evening began, excitement bubbled up again. Jake watched as prizes were awarded, the laughter returning, drowning out any lingering hesitation. He felt a renewed pulse of joy absorb him, and he found himself engaging with friends and acquaintances, sharing smiles and exchanging stories. A familiar voice drew him back to the moment. It was Lisa, a childhood friend who had always believed in him, even when he struggled to believe in himself. I'm so proud of you for stepping up. This place wouldn't be the same without people like you, she said, her eyes sparkling with genuine warmth. Thanks, Lisa. I didn't expect to feel this way, he admitted, his voice steady now. The transformation was palpable. He was no longer the uncertain kid in the back of the room. He was becoming an integral part of the story unfolding before him. As the crowd began to disperse, Jake felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him. The laughter and connection lingered, and he knew he was ready to embrace whatever came next. Geared with pride and courage, he approached the plaque one final time. Here it was, his name shimmering in gold, surrounded by the names of those who had made an impact. It no longer felt like a solitary act. Instead, his signature joined a chorus, each name a thread woven into the fabric of community. No longer nervous, he recognized his place among them, commitment to contribute, to grow, to stand tall. Tonight was just the start, Jake whispered to himself. As he stepped outside into the fresh night air, stars dotted the sky, illuminating his path. There was an undeniable exhilaration coursing through him, ready to forge ahead into new adventures and new contributions. He was done hiding in the shadows. The night's events had sparked something powerful within him, a commitment to show up, to connect, to make a difference. Every heartbeat echoed the sentiment of hope that he was ready to forge a new legacy, one not defined by fear but by action. Jake smiled to himself, knowing that with every small step forward he was becoming who he was always meant to be, a vital part of the community, ready to engage with endless possibilities. Tonight he took a leap out of the shadows and he felt ready to soar. The atmosphere in the community center was electric, laughter and chatter swirling together like a lively dance. Jake stood at the back, hands shoved deep in his pockets, a mix of nerves and anticipation thrumming through him. This was the annual fundraiser for a place that had been a haven in his childhood. Here he had played basketball, taken art classes, and made friendships that felt unbreakable. But tonight, despite being surrounded by old friends, he felt like a ghost. People moved around him, smiling and sharing stories, but Jake couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider looking in. As he watched the crowd, he felt an odd mix of pride and shame. He had contributed, but it was just a small donation, barely enough to make a dent in the funding they needed. He tucked his chin lower, hoping to blend into the wall behind him. He glanced at the large, polished donation plaque hanging prominently at the front of the room. Each name glittered under the soft lights and his heart sank for a moment. Just a few letters, but they seemed to claw at his insides. How had he thought that this small gesture would matter among so many generous patrons? Suddenly, Maria, the dynamic director of the center, stepped up to the microphone, her smile infectious. "Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for being here tonight." The applause erupted, sweeping through the crowd like a warm wave. Jake could feel the excitement thrumming around him, but it only intensified his anxiety. Would they really notice him? Did they even care? Maria continued, her voice ringing with enthusiasm. His heart plummeted, time froze, he could feel every set of eyes in the room locking onto him like a spotlight, illuminating every flaw he had tried to hide. He remained rooted, unable to move, as the laughter and applause cascaded toward him like a tidal wave. Maria's voice was bright and inviting, but all he felt was a surge of panic. This isn't what he wanted. He had thought a simple donation would go unnoticed, but now he was being thrust into the limelight and he could feel the walls closing in. "Just breathe," he whispered to himself, finally managing to step forward. Every inch toward the front felt heavy, his feet almost dragging with the weight of everyone looking at him. How had it come to this? As he approached the stage, he caught sight of the plaque again, practically glowing with the names of those who had given much more than he ever could. The thought made his heart race, a mixture of pride and shame wrestled within him. Did he even deserve to be up there? Maria declared, pulling him into a swift, warm hug that filled him with a momentary sense of calm. He smiled weakly, unsure of what else to say. He had hoped to avoid this moment entirely, to contribute quietly from the shadows. But now he was front and center. She asked, nudging him toward the microphone. The laughter from the crowd barely registered. Panic rose in him as he gazed out into the sea of familiar faces. He opened his mouth, but no words emerged. Instead, he felt a lump rise in his throat. Was all he managed, his voice wavering. He caught sight of Mike at the back of the room, leaning nonchalantly against the wall, arms crossed, laughter dancing on his lips. The familiar smirk pushed a wave of shame crashing over him. "Look who's in the spotlight," Mike called out, laughter erupting from his friends. The laughter pierced through Jake, a sharp poke that cut him deeper than he imagined. He had almost forgotten about Mike, a presence that always seemed to loom, a voice that always seemed to critique. Before he could shrink back into himself, Maria chimed in, "Come on, let's keep this positive." Jake felt the warmth of her words wrapping around him, allowing a flicker of confidence to bloom amidst the embarrassment. Maybe he was here for a reason. Something within him stirred, demanding to be recognized. He called back, "I may not have donated a lot, but this place is important to me. I grew up here." Applause erupted again, echoing in the spacious room like a gentle wave rolling over him. The combination of laughter, clapping, and Maria's encouraging smile infused him with newfound energy. Perhaps he had a voice after all. Jake stood tall, searching for strength in the faces around him. Every smile felt like a spark igniting courage within. This wasn't just about a name on a plaque, it was about connection and community. As he scanned the room, he saw more than just familiar faces. He saw a tapestry of lives intertwined. Each person represented a unique story woven into this shared space. Suddenly, the laughter felt less like mockery and more like a harmonious melody of life. The event shifted into the next phase, the excitement bubbling over into a raffle. Jake realized finally that he was part of this community, living, breathing, thriving. The laughter transformed around him, reverberating with positivity. He began to mingle, smiling and sharing stories, feeling a rush of warmth that pushed back against every doubt he had felt before. As the raffle progressed, Jake felt lighter, almost buoyant. One by one, people called out their excitement, their names ringing through the air. He was caught up in the joy, laughter swirling through the room like a fragrant breeze. Then suddenly a loud announcement pierced the air. And the grand prize winner is... The words hung there for a moment and Jake's heart soared, then plummeted. He had won. The cheers around him exploded, but he couldn't absorb it. His eyes widened and he found himself stumbling forward again, this time propelled by sheer disbelief. "What?" he gasped, disbelief clouding his thoughts. Shouted Maria as she handed him a gift card to the local cafe. "See, you're part of this." Something inside him shifted. It wasn't just about winning, it was validation and acknowledgement of his place here. As applause erupted once more, he felt a burning glow inside him. He stood before the crowd, lighter, more alive than ever, ready to embrace this journey. But just as he soaked in the moment, his gaze caught Mike's again. This time Mike wasn't smirking, he was glaring. A storm brewed in Mike's eyes, a flicker of resentment glinting across his face. Jake felt the air shift, tension tightening around him like a noose. At that moment it dawned on him, he hadn't just intercepted the spotlight on a celebratory night, he had disrupted an unspoken hierarchy. "I can't believe you," Mike muttered under his breath, pushing through the crowd toward Jake. Jake's heart pounded, a primal instinct urging him to retreat, but determination replaced the fear. "I'm not taking anything, Mike. All I did was want to help." Mike's expression shifted, his eyes narrowing. "Help? You think talking about your donation makes you special?" The last words crashed over Jake like ice water. The thrill had drained from the room, replaced by an impending atmosphere of tension. But the fire in Jake's chest burned brighter. "It's not just about me." A silence enveloped them, the air thickening with the tension that seemed to stretch indefinitely. Suddenly, laughter erupted again, but it wasn't coming from the crowd. Everyone was watching the confrontation unfold, the room caught in an unexpected hush. "Maybe you don't get it, Jake," Mike pressed, stepping closer, a dangerous fire igniting behind his words. "Think you can just say how you feel and everything will be sunshine and rainbows?" For a moment, fear gripped Jake again. His heart raced in his chest. Did Mike have a point? Was he in fact out of his depth here? But then he remembered the warmth of acceptance he felt earlier, surrounded by those who believed in providing support. This was about more than just donations. This was about community, lifting others, crafting hope from shared dreams. Jake held his ground, clenching his fists. "I'm not backing down, Mike." The crowd buzzed with excitement and tension, eyes darting back and forth like they were witnessing a pivotal moment in a play. In that charged silence, Maria stepped forward. "Everyone, let's keep this positive." But before she could defuse the situation, Mike shot back. "You think you can just brush this aside?" Jake could sense the tension rising, the words hanging heavy in the air. The room felt charged, as if every person present held their breath, waiting for what would happen next. That's when Jake noticed something in Mike's eyes, a flicker of insecurity, a glimpse of fear underneath his bravado. In that moment, Jake realized that this wasn't just about him. It was about everyone struggling to find their place in a community that didn't always welcome them. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of years spent hiding dissolve away. What if he could be the change that inspired someone else to step forward? Maybe Mike deserved that chance too. "Mike," he said gently but firmly, "we all have a right to be here. You don't have to push me down to lift yourself up." A hush fell over the crowd, the words hanging like the last flickers of light before darkness closed in. Jake stood his ground, feeling the electricity in the air, his heart pounding wildly like a drum urging him forward. And then for the first time he saw a softening in Mike's expression. A glimmer of something deeper stirred within him, an acknowledgement, maybe even a hint of understanding. But in that charged moment, chaos erupted, and a bottle crashed to the floor, shattering glass everywhere, the sound as sharp as the tension that had built between them. Jake's heart raced, but this time he wasn't just standing there. He turned to face Mike, ready for whatever would come next, emboldened by the courage of a community that was learning, growing, and fighting together. The night had shifted. It was no longer just an evening of celebration, it had transformed into a volatile moment of truth. And in the face of that brewing storm, Jake could feel the world around him crack and shift, hoping for a chance to build a bridge instead of burning it down. As the crowd watched, breathless and wide-eyed, he stood firm, not backing down, ready to embrace whatever reality lay ahead.